JDAI formally began around 1992 from the fundamental notion that kids do better when they're not incarcerated.
We were in the midst of a if it bleeds, it leads, crack cocaine, Bloods and Crips, super predator, Central Park jogger, school shootings, and all of that made its way into the youth justice system.
And so it was very difficult for us to make any kind of headway because of the perception that kids were dangerous. And so JDAI entered the scene right in the middle of that historic period.
In the early 1990s, I saw a bolt on the floor and I asked what it was about. And the superintendent of the facility said, that's how we secure young people who are out of control. They literally chained them to the floor.
In many places, laws were being passed that essentially increased reliance on confinement for both juveniles and adults. And we were saying to places, wait, stop and consider a different alternative.
And I just told Bart Lou about it. This was the dumbest idea, JDAI. You're going to get a bunch of government people in the room and good things are going to come of that. You guys are crazy.
I thought that, it looked good. It was just, is this really going to work?
Who was not a big fan of JDAI.
And I remember as a line staff probation officer, I was like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what this is going to do.
We looked at our system and the kids weren't the problem. It was getting the adults to play well in the sandbox that was the challenge.
The biggest job I had was getting them to believe that I was sincere about doing this. I mean, I kind of looked like a rural southern, sheriff rather than a reformer.
We had some bumps in the road as we went along, but we smoothed them out.
I was asked to go and meet with the head of the probation union to try to explain risk assessment to him, and I did. His name was Lou, and Lou looked at me and he stared at me, and his opening comment was, "Why don't you just get the out of my county?" And I didn't know quite how to react to that.
We know jail doesn't work for kids. We know incarceration does not work.
We're going to spend a lot of money on these kids. We should spend it correctly to get the outcomes.
So not one component by itself works, but when you include all of the different core strategies, it really, really changed the culture and practice of our circuit.
So as a state coordinator, I saw the core strategies being implemented across the sites and the system started improving for kids. I started to drink the JDAI Kool-Aid.
We had places start to raise their hand. We want in, we're interested, we want to grow.
State scale was a game changer for JDAI. We were able to take this work on at the state level.
And New Jersey was the absolute best example of that, of how you build state-level infrastructure to carry forth JDAI, because they could teach other jurisdictions to do this work in a way that was thoughtful, inclusive, and focused on results and with fidelity.
We've made great progress, but I really think it's based upon a long history of collaborative partnership with the three branches of government, also with nonprofit organizations.
JDAI has always sought to keep current and to the demands of the sites that we work with. Over time, that included the introduction of the Pathways series. We had the model sites. We had the introduction of the JDAI Help Desk, the Deep End Initiative, the Applied Leadership Network, a guide for working with non-citizen youth in the juvenile justice system. That's why we have a guide to working with LGBT youth. The results of JDAI sites really have been amazing.
We are almost 60% smaller than we were when we first began.
We were arresting and detaining over 4,000 young people per year. And last year, there were under 1,000.
We've gone from hundreds of kids to last year, we had 19 kids. The year before, 10 kids that were sent to juvenile prison.
Over 50% reduction of the use of detention being sustained.
Our average daily population at the time that we started was probably 108. And it's nothing for us to be at about 20, 25.
Our school-based arrests are down 91%. Our graduation rates since then have increased 30%. And our juvenile crime rate is down 71%.
The Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative has for us been an entree into using decision-based analysis to impact young people and families in all areas of our work.
JDAI became not an initiative of Casey, but it became owned by the people who did the work.
It's not just the foundation pushing stuff out, but they've been able to get folks to feel ownership of the JDAI process.
The fact that JDAI in and of itself is a network across the country is really one of the strongest, attributes of the whole initiative.
Now we know that an appropriate juvenile detention facility should not focus on discipline and punishment, but in fact should foster relationships between the staff and the young people there.
We have a young person who's hurting in our community. How do we wrap some people around him, build on whatever strengths he has, and get him connected on a path to success, and maybe someday he can have my job and do the same thing.
I believe that this initiative is strong at its core because it's the right thing to do.
What they espoused and what was controversial when they started is now baseline practice. If you don't have a risk assessment instrument, if you don't have a continuum for detention alternatives, if you're not accelerating case processing, what's wrong with you?
I would shudder to think what my community would look like if JDAI had never been introduced to Clayton County.
There will never be a non-JDAI conversation, so it will be as if it was always there. It will be just part of the culture, part of the process.
The challenges after 20 years of an initiative such as JDAI is what's its continued relevance and how do we continue to have it be relevant?
We can't just sit on the laurels of what success we've achieved. We have to expand the initiative. We have to grow the reform. We have to continue to challenge old ideas and assumptions.
I'm inspired every time I go into a state, every time I go to a statewide conference, every time I go on site and see the people who are doing the work. JDAI will evolve. We have no idea where this world is going 25 years from now, but I believe in this network. I believe in people who have committed themselves to doing right by kids, to doing right by public safety, doing right by their communities, and are committed to having a juvenile justice system that is not only more fair, not only more equitable for all kids, not only treats all kids better, but actually has the ambition for a juvenile justice system that helps kids, helps them thrive, and helps their communities thrive. I have no doubt that if anyone is going to do it in the country, it is going to be the people who are part of the JDI network.